All right, so I just got a copy of the order from the magistrate judge who reviewed the case. There were 8 charges between Joshua Gray and Rogue Nation. So let's just look what what his order is. Okay, 17-page order. The motions they filed for acquittal, those were all denied. There were 8 counts. Generally, they were either you were on the property and you didn't have permission to film, or you violated a regulation that said that you couldn't do this. So typically you get charged with both. First is that you filmed without authorization or permission. And secondly, you violated a sign that said you couldn't do it. So they typically run in tandem. Since each of these are Class C misdemeanors, according to federal law, each had a 30-day max sentence and $5,000 fine. If I remember correctly, Metz was facing 6 potential convictions. And I think the same for the other guy, but I really didn't pay much attention to him. But I just want to get through this right now. So you guys want to keep score? He just kind of gives the background. I mentioned that the judge had 3 questions that he asked at oral argument, which is about video recordings. Are they, space occupied by tenant agency? About building inches lobbies, was for news purposes, et cetera, et cetera. And then here's the charge of 2 federal regulations. What is the policy concerning conformity of official signs and directions? They must at all times comply with official signs. And then here is the regulation. There are areas here for news purposes. And then the main thing here between A and B is it non-commercial or is it commercial? Because they operated a YouTube channel, I would say that was commercial. As far as no permission needed, because these are the sections within the federal space that isn't typically where they conduct business. And so therefore, those are safe. But anyway, one of the things I said this morning is the government is going to argue this is a non-public forum. That's immediately was fatal to DMA's case and also in Stamp's case, the other YouTuber. And of course, the judge agreed that this is a non-public forum, in which case the restrictions only have to be reasonable, not even the best ones. This is the typical argument you hear by the auditors, is that I have a First Amendment right. And I've always said this and they always disagree with me. So here it is again. You're not a lawyer. And, our rights, even the Second Amendment, just reading it, it says there shall not be a bridge. Shall not is mandatory. But there are all kinds of limitations on the Second Amendment. It says, here he goes, the SSA offices are not by tradition or designation a forum for public communication. They are non-public forums. There's a lot of case law on this, and this International Society for Krishna Consciousness has wound up in a lot of different federal briefs. This is pretty much a gold standard case. Now, having deduced that they're non-public, because that's already been established by case law, the federal system, then we come to reasonable regulations. So, and the regulations can't be intended to stifle out a particular viewpoint. Well, the auditors don't come in with a particular viewpoint. They just come in to film. It says, like he said, it need not be the best one. That's the Krishna case again. Then he relied heavily on one of the managers for the Social Security office in Orlando. If I remember correctly, they were at 3 different Social Security offices. And so he talked about security and privacy reasons. I told you about a Florida case that no one found that came from directly the Supreme Court that said a government entrusted with private information has a duty to protect it and will be liable for allowing that information to get out. So, like the Stamps case where the judge said, I'm just going to use common sense here. You don't have a right to film over walls and behind partitions so that you can see what people are doing. And then Flores said, you have a lot of people who are dropping off leases, a lot of different types of proof or documentation we need to process eligibility for benefits. And then behind a barrier that Metz raised his camera to film above is the Center for Processing Social Security Cards. So we're getting right into the thing I said this morning and been saying all along. The privacy and the safeguard of confidential information is going to override everything. And that's exactly what happened here. You're going to be asking about names. So, I talked about identity theft. How would an auditor feel if I took a camera and I walked into a Social Security office, started filming him while he's at a window getting discussions? There is this exception to that where a person can record, but if you read in context what that regulation said, it said for a person who's trying to get service, they can record private, the conversation directly with the representative so that they don't make mistakes or they understand better what the requirements are that they have to comply with for eligibility, but that doesn't get imparted to third parties. Court does not find this regulation to be unreasonable in light of the concerns articulated. And then here, the idea of commercial purposes is a big deal because if it's commercial, non-commercial, then the level of permission can drop. One of the things that I thought would count against them was even if they didn't get written permission, or I'm sorry, even if there are conflicting ways that permission is granted, either written or informally, what I saw in the briefs was that the officers and the managers at the Social Security offices were saying the idea was don't film us doing confidential things. The only question is whether it is reasonable to expect individuals to comply with unspecified security regulations, rules, orders, or directives. This is where the judge was concerned in briefing, at the briefing stage, about whether or not the average Joe, I think is what he called them, would say, hey, how did I know that I'm in trouble? And my response to that is the exact response he said here. You have adequate warnings. You'll get the notices on the doors and windows and the glass. You'll have the security officers telling you not to do it. So it won't be where you walk in and you're automatically convicted and you didn't even realize that you were in trouble. There's prior notice. And this is exactly what happened here. So he said they're viewpoint neutral because these regulations do not try to squelch a particular point of view. Now, following findings of fact and conclusions of law. So Joshua Gray, he was with Metz, counts 1 and 2. Then he goes to the part here. I find that he violated this section. No evidence he received permission from an occupying agent or authorized officer. Now, receiving permission, notice that he didn't say written or oral. He just said, okay, maybe there are instances where you need written permission and but the person just says, don't do it. I think the judge is taking the right tact here, which is, if you're told not to do it, you need to listen. Okay, you're in a Social Security office. 3 and 4 was Metz only. There was an argument raised in his motion for acquittal, which is, can you really say that's him? Because you never said that's the bad guy, like in Al Pacino in Scarface. You never said that's the guy that did it. I'm the bad guy. Well, there's many ways to authenticate something. You can authenticate it based on venue. Where were the Social Security offices located? In the Middle District of Tennessee, Florida. So therefore, venue was the right place. And I think, did they even go on Metz's YouTube channel and they saw that the videos were posted there? So you got enough authentication. Authentication is not a high standard to overcome. So he found that this is Metz. I mean, I don't blame Metz's lawyer for trying that. At least he tried, Then here is the other question, because I think the CFR only prohibited photography, but the sign said videography. My argument was the videography was worse. So if photography is banned, there's no way you could possibly allow videotaping, because then you get sound. It says, Metz pointed his camera to the official signs of prohibited photography, videography, yet he continued to film. I find that he violated the section. No evidence he received permission. Found that he violated it. For 5 and 6, both of them got charged. Once again, the same rationale. They each violated it. There's no evidence that they received permission. I find that they violated it. 7 and 8, right here. If you guys want to, actually read all this, you can slow it down, I guess, on the video. I just want to get through it quickly. Both violators. Count 8 is clear from the interaction with Mr. Flores that neither Gray nor Metz had received the permission of the official or the agency to film. Conclusions. Defendants truly might have believed that they were acting within the confines of the law and exercising their First Amendment rights, but innocence cannot be asserted of an action which violates existing law, and ignorance of the law will not excuse. The reasons set forth below, I find the motions should be denied, and that the defendants are guilty of the violations as charged in the information. So next, since these are Class C misdemeanors, they may probably entertain appeals. But there it is, hot off the press. This was actually a pretty easy case to call. if you look at the questions the judge was asking, he was asking for clarification in certain areas that would have been beneficial to the defendants. I think this judge was really trying to be careful here. But remember, the government came up with the DMA case, although it's not cited here, but it's persuasive. In the Stamps case, it's persuasive. The non-public forum arguments were made there. You have a pattern here, and it doesn't say anything here yet about what the sentence shall be, because we don't know yet. Now, a magistrate judge works under the direction of the district court judge. And so there's still some steps left here to be completed. And like I said, potentially any appeals. All right, so there you have it. Slow down the video and then you can go through this thing and read every word if you'd like. This kind of went as I expected. Thank you.